Alright guys, here you go. Pictures up. Let's rolling.
As a documentary maker, you could wait a lifetime to happen upon a story as unusual and as extraordinary as this one.
Here you go. Rolling.
Take one.
Action.
A 13-year-old boy from San Antonio, Texas, goes missing without a trace.
It's nice to meet you, Nick.
The thought of what somebody could have done to him, it gives you nightmares.
3 years later, his family are contacted by the authorities and told that their son and brother has turned up in a children's home in Spain.
And the family and the FBI and the State Department kind of spring into action and go to get him.
And when they go to Spain, their missing loved one is different. He has dark eyes, not blue eyes. He has dark hair, not blonde hair. He speaks with a thick French accent, not a Texan twang.
What? No one would be wrong about something like that.
We didn't need to prove who he was. We knew who he was.
All is not quite as it seems.
Wait a minute. Maybe he was not Nicholas Barclay. You're gonna finally tell me who you are. He said, I'm Frederick Bourdin, and I'm wanted by Interpol.
Fuck him.
This is one of the most compelling, striking stories you'll ever hear.
I think it's a documentary that's unlike anything you would have seen before.
So just as Frederick mimicked Nicholas, I mimicked Frederick. A lean forward, and then to the right, and then a lean back.
A documentary that will take you to places you wouldn't expect to go, and visually and structurally it feels like a work of cinema rather than a traditional documentary. The Imposter is a story which is truly stranger than fiction.
Something was being hidden, and I didn't know what that was.
Something happened inside that house to that boy.
It's a story that if it wasn't true, you would never believe it.
Rolling. Speeding. Set. Action, tumbleweed.
So I originally found a story about Frederick, about the imposter.
When Bart first told me about the story, as a filmmaker, you get these kind of two reactions. One is, can that really be true? But on the other hand, there's this kind of growing sense of excitement because the potential for this kind of film really don't come along that often. You immediately start to think, this deserves to be on the big screen. This is our first theatrical documentary. We've made countless documentaries for television, but we've never done anything for the big screen before. We were going into the unknown on a huge amount of levels, and we were lucky to be very well advised by John Batzik and Simon Chin, who came on board as executive producers, who've got an amazing track record in Oscar-winning documentaries.
I mean, in some respects, this was the dream project. You know, we're on the lookout for amazing stories.
And I sort of feel like it would always work better as a documentary because you need to see those people and you need to look them in the eye. You need to try and understand what happened. So that was really the starting point, and from there we made contact with Frederick. When I met him, he's a compelling and confusing and extraordinary character. And at times you find him childlike and sympathetic and like someone who needs looking after, and then at other times, one of the extraordinary things is I felt like I was sort of falling under the spell of the story that he wanted me to hear.
The obligation that you owe to someone like that, it's very difficult to figure that out because here is someone who has misled, lied to, manipulated about
a person in the film that looks directly down the lens. He looks you in the eye. He's also significantly bigger in frame than some of the other contributors. I wanted to try and increase your experience of him, that you felt like you were on the receiving end of all of his storytelling. When we began on this journey to understand what had happened, that in itself began a kind of detective story of its own.
When you're telling a retrospective story, which lots of documentaries do, usually the story's set out for you and you know exactly what your beginning, middle and end is going to be and what the twists and turns are along the way. But when we started out on this film, one of my initial jobs was to actually work out what might be the truth and what actually might have happened.
So under the Freedom of Information Act, we were allowed access to the FBI files. Poppy was then sat in front of these massive lever arch files, figuring out the chronology of what had happened and which bits were relevant to the story that we were trying to tell.
When I got the FBI files through, it was a little bit overwhelming. We had this massive paperwork. There's Interpol documents, there's Frederick's mugshot, notes from Nancy Fisher, the FBI agent, San Antonio Police Department notes. It was in no particular chronological order. So many of the names and dates are redacted, and it took a couple of months, I think, really, to work through it and decipher exactly what I had there and what we were going to make of it. There were times that I felt a bit like an FBI agent, you know, turning over the next page and finding out what the next revelation was. The breakthrough moments for me when I was looking through the FBI files were probably quite in sync with those moments in the film where, you know, your jaw drops and you go, oh my God. Reading, or that moment when the Interpol documents come through, the facts to Nancy Fisher.
He was not Nicholas Barclay, he was Frederick Bourdain.
It was jaw-dropping.
I found myself looking at the FBI files and kind of being amazed that it really happened, even though I knew it had. This is unbelievable, but here it is.
Making a documentary, I guess one of the most important things is the people who are going to tell you that story, and without them there is no film. So once I'd gone through the FBI files, it was then time to actually go and find the family, the private investigator, the FBI agent herself, and start to hear from their own words what they remember having happened. I went to Texas a number of times. The first one was probably the craziest of them all. I'd never been to Texas. I very quickly turned into a bit of a private investigator myself. I mean, I literally had clues, addresses, and a car, and found myself driving around, pretty much staking out houses, trying to find these people.
I think generally as a documentary maker, you know, you find that most people, if you talk to them for long enough, are fascinating and have an amazing story. I think in this case, one of the things which was most truthfully enjoyable about making the film was that all of the characters are extraordinary.
My name is Charlie Parker. I'm a private investigator.
Some of them, I mean Charlie Parker in particular, felt like they inhabited a space somewhere in between Real World and a Coen Brothers movie.
A lot of times we would use a briefcase camera, where the camera is right there, if you can see it. Pin camera, which we'll put like right here. And we use it quite a lot, my wife and I do. It looks like a VCR, but we'll set it in a house. It's filming out. This device here, we might use in an apartment. It looks like an electric box, but inside is the camera.
I had a whole list of previous addresses for Carrie, the sister, and for Beverly, the mother, and over the course of a number of days I was driving around San Antonio, knocking on doors, trying to talk to neighbours who may know where they are, and for days I had no luck at all. It was as if they'd literally just disappeared off the planet. I drove up to this dive bar on the side of a dusty road, wonky handwritten sign on it. There was a handful of locals sitting around the bar, drinking. Of course, they all turned round and stared as this English girl walked in, evidently out of place. I tried to look, you know, as local as I could and propped myself up at the bar, and this guy sitting next to me sort of gave me a nudge and said, I don't think this is a place for a nice girl like you. So I think I made a pretty swift exit and jumped back in my car. For a moment there, I thought we might never be able to tell our story. I eventually knocked on the door of a little house out in the woodlands north of San Antonio. Cody, Carey's son, who appears briefly in the film, I knew that he either lived there or had lived there, and it was the first time that the person behind the door said, oh yeah, sure, Cody's inside, I'll just get him. And it was such a relief, you know, to think, oh, finally, they do exist. But at that point, I had no idea whether they'd even want to talk to me or what they might think. You know, I really had no idea whether this was going to be the end of the journey at this, you know, this doorstep. I spoke to Carey the next day, and she was unequivocal about the fact that they really didn't want to talk and they really didn't want to take part, and it wasn't for them.
There had been things written about them in the past, and I don't think they felt that they had come out well. I think in a couple of the written pieces it was very damning of them. It was an episode that they weren't in a hurry to revisit.
she said to me, we think about Nicholas and want to go down that road again. And I understood that, you know, as a human to a human. But at the same time, I wanted to tell her about the film. I wanted to tell her how we were looking to do it, and that maybe it would offer them something that they hadn't been offered in the past.
They'd never really had the chance to tell their side of the story in their own words.
Eventually, they all agreed to take part. I think they thought that they really might welcome this opportunity to explain what it was like for them and what they went through, and to respond to those allegations that were coming up against them.
I think one of the really interesting challenges for me as a doc maker was this idea that, you know, as a documentary maker, you're searching for a definitive truth, really. And here, I understood that wasn't going to happen. I would go from one interview one day, convinced that I understood exactly what had happened.
I neatly called Carrie Gibson and I said to her, Carrie,
for this, you know, I could do the doc bit and I wanted someone else who could, you know, bring the feature film.
When you're editing, you're a bit of a recycler, really. I mean, you look for anything that you can use. When I sat and started working on 2 days' worth of interviews with Frederick, when the camera stopped, Frederick would just be... And because he's so manipulative and such a fascinating character, you could just sit and watch his face, and this is what I ended up doing. So I started using these moments of Frederick, just looking, with an odd expression, and it just became integral to the film. It's a technique that you would use in drama. You'd watch someone's reaction to a question as opposed to watching the question, and it's more interesting to see the response, and through that we could actually add a layer of information. What's really going on in his mind? Is it the same as what he's saying? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. The footage.
Music's a huge tool in helping the emotion and the action of the film. In this case, the story was so crazy and strong that we didn't want the music to overpower it, to hold the audience's hand. It didn't need it. Bart came to me with a very clear idea of what he wanted.
I wanted something that was a kind of quite classic in a way. I felt like this was film noir territory.
Music that wasn't totally overblown in Hollywood and, you know, nothing huge and epic. He wanted something quite minimal, pared back. At the same time, he wanted it to be dramatic and compelling. And then we needed the music to sort of twist and turn as things are unraveling without giving too much away. We first meet Bourdain near the very beginning of the film, and we establish what he's like and what he's up to. I wanted to capture the intrigue behind Bourdain's motivations and the way he was hatching a plan. So we came up with this sort of web of lies theme. This sort of ticking clock, something that was just tinkering away, Bourdain's brain hatching a plan. So after tinkering through ideas on the keyboard, we got together a small orchestra and we recorded all 45 tracks over 2 days.
Anne Nickerton, who is the unbelievably talented composer, like many of us didn't have a track record in feature film.
So this is really the first proper feature film that I could sink my teeth into.
She was heavily pregnant throughout the whole thing and had the energy and would deliver things that were just so impressive and cinematic.
Hopefully together we came up with what we set out to do.
When you go into any film, documentary or not, the ambition and desire is fundamentally to tell the best possible story in the way that you see it. The complication of making documentary is that there are real people involved, and you build inevitably real relationships with these people, and that does, to some extent, inhibit your judgment, your view of the story. It gives you a kind of sense of responsibility to those people. That is not an unhealthy experience to go through when telling a factual story. You do feel more responsible to the facts, and you also feel more responsible to different people's sort of subjective experience of the facts. And I think, you know, this in a way is a film that's all about that.
We were always incredibly conscious that there was a tragedy at the heart of these events, that whatever the film would be, there was a young boy who'd gone missing, who hadn't been found again, and that is a tragedy for any family, no matter what else you think. So once we'd finished the film, it was very important to show it to them. It was kind of almost the most nervous I'd been, actually, was hearing the response. I showed them the film before the premiere, and they ultimately were pleased that they had done it, because they felt that the things that they needed to say, that they hadn't ever had the opportunity to before, were all prepared to do for a family, to get a family, to defend a family.
3, 2, 1, go.
This film is the first time that this story has been told in its entirety. I really hope people experience some of the ride that we went on in making it.
I just feel really lucky that I look enough like somebody who did something extraordinary to get the chance to have an extraordinary experience myself.
Making The Imposter has been a dream come true. It's been the most nerve-wracking and extraordinary ride, which at various points made us look into the brink of bankruptcy. But now, I just think, thank God we went for it.
I think that Bart and Dimitri together are a real new force to be reckoned with.
I just hope we get to do more.